This is gonna contain major spoilers for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. If you don't want spoilers, if you haven't played the game the whole way through, go ahead and click off. So this is just my thoughts on the story of Scarlet and Violet. I've been giving it some thinking lately, and I actually, as I think about it, and I compile what I feel was relevant to notice, the more I think it's quite brilliant. Well, if you care to listen, feel free to disagree. I wrote out my thoughts, so I'm gonna be reading. So the more I think about the story elements and beats to Scarlet and Violet, I find myself enjoying the direction it went. This time, it wasn't about the Pokemon as a primary focus. The story was about you and watching people discover themselves by just being supportive. Not some cheesy power friendship, but with real emotions of doubt, insecurity, discomfort, and having good intent but lacking the tact to carry it out. The treasure was learning what you truly want for yourself and seeking the strength of will to go after it. With Nimona, she had already discovered her treasure long before she met you. She wanted to be a top ranked trainer and she achieved that. She also wanted to push others to achieve the same goal, but she didn't know that despite her positivity, she was being really toxic in her approach. From our end, just putting ourselves in the shoes of the actual character and not just the player. From our end, we just got our Pokemon, and already this woman we don't know who is acting like she's our greatest friend in the world and is challenging us. To put yourself in the universe, not as the player, someone competing against you that you have no familiarity with, whom you know is way better at a sport that you're trying for the first time, is really intimidating. To put things in perspective, if Mona was teaching a child to swim with her method, she dropped them in the deep end and keeps saying they can swim when they clearly have no idea how. Her treasure was learning humility and understanding that not everyone has the same drive or goal as her, even if they compete in the same sport. She needed to learn boundaries and respect people's time to grow. A lot of us can relate to that, being pushed by someone that means well, but doesn't understand the pressure they are putting on you. Or wanting the best for someone and thinking we are doing all we can while blaming them for lack of results when we didn't bother to understand how the person learns or give them the space to find out what works best for them. With Arvin, I'm sure many of us didn't like Arvin at first. He was rude, condescending, and seemed to feel entitled to your time. We didn't know the weight of his grief. He was in pain because his Pokemon was ill. One of his parents died and the other one abandoned him. The only friend he knew was the one he was afraid of losing. But he felt alone, so he latches onto you because of how you bonded with a Pokemon he hated that reminded him of his past. You reminded him of his trauma, so he expected you to make up for it by helping him. With reluctance, and for the promise of finding something that will benefit you, you help him. I don't believe Arvin actually expected you to show up at all and likely resigned himself to failure. But even though he knew he wasn't kind to you, you showed up, and that ember of hope. I'm sorry, this Arvin's story gets me emotional. I legit cried when I found out what his motivation was. So forgive me for getting a little choked up here, because as someone who has a disabled dog, my dog is blind. I can relate to how he felt and how just like yeah. So forgive me for getting a little choked up here. Um, even though he wasn't kind to you, he showed up, and that ember of hope he had to make Mabosif strong again became a small fire that grew with results. As a dog tag to a disabled pit boxer, I know the pain of watching your friend, your furry child, in pain. And even though they are the one in distress, they still try to comfort you. My dog went blind about a year ago, and I blame myself before learning boxers are predisposed to going blind. But even knowing that, I still feel guilty, still wonder what I could have done to prevent it. Arvin knows that it's not his fault his Mabostiff was critically injured and sick. He loves that his dog protected him, but survivor's guilt can be really heavy on the heart. Compound that with parental issues and lack of social skills, I can see why Arvin came off as as off-putting until we got to know him better and made him feel important, cared for, and worthy of Mabostiff will want to protect him. Arvin's treasure was realizing he mattered, He deserves love and isn't alone. Sorry, as a dog parent, I'm remembering when the first time we see Mabostiff in the game, or Arvin's Mabostiff, and that scene. Even think about it. Whew, okay. Penny. She's kind of like Nimona in having good intent but toxic positivity, though in a more subtle way. She desired to help her fellow classmates who were being bullied by giving them the confidence to fight back. This, however, backfired when her crew came off as bullies and the gang she created became bigger than she expected. Director Clavel joins you because he wants to understand what happened and why students didn't feel safe coming to school. He ends up learning how he failed as an instructor, and guardian to those who needed protecting. His treasure was learning to become a better educator, and listen more. Because Penny felt the Star Gang was out of control, because Penny felt the Star Gang was out of control, especially because Thumper, I don't need the backup commentary. I really don't. Okay, I love you. Okay. Because Penny felt the Star Gang was out of control, especially because people were joining to act like bullies and contradicting the point. But because she lacked confidence in the strength of character to take full responsibility for what she created, she manipulates you in taking down the Star Crew. Seeing you step up put her own weakness into perspective. And even though she wasn't giving you a choice, you didn't shy from the challenge either. She both envied and respected your confidence to take on what she feared, responsibility. Penny had to come to terms with how she failed to make things better. She had to face those she hurt and failed, but also learn people can still care about you even if you didn't do things absolutely correctly. The Star Crew bosses never blamed her for the fallout, but Penny was still a leader, so she was responsible and ran away when things got difficult. Her treasure was learning to take responsibility, accepting that people looked up to her. That it's okay to fail, but not okay to run away from your problems, especially when your failure has branching negative consequences. I think this more grounded narrative of self-discovery was good. The understanding of hardship, self-worth, and community was compelling. Think it shows that Game Freak understands that many types of people play the games, and they wanted us to understand that they see us. That Pokemon was ultimately meant to engender good nature, remind us to consider what others are going through, to test ourselves without ego, and be mindful in how we address things and people.